Mentalz. Cocolophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person steals fizzy drinks and drinks very fast. Groinophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person scratches his or her groin continuously and then smells. Twistophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person writes stories with numerous twists and turns and finally tears the scripts. Newtonophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person sits under a tree and waits for countless hours for an apple to fall on their head. Which tree is another big question. Deiophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person thinks every day is a Sunday and sleeps like a cat. Sisterophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person loves their sisters too much that they forgot their own life. Kichimuchiphobia, a kind of mental illness where a person tickles others from head to toe and laughs like a witch who had forgotten magic. Riscophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person rushes to take risk but fails to succeed after wasting time and money. Festivalophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person celebrates all festivals and becomes a poor human being with a bunch of waste bank accounts. Doctorophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person visits doctors for no valid reason and starts complaining about pandemic. Armpitophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person forgets to shave his or her armpit hair for years but plucks it off at night suddenly. Merciophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person shows mercy even to an ant or mosquito but kills them if it bites. Withdrawalophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person withdraws money from their bank account only to deposit again few hours later. Respectophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person respects old people but puts them under house arrest if they refuse to go to old folks' home. Jumpophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person jumps from a moving bus all of a sudden but never gets hurt. Futurophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person predicts the future too much that they forget to even poo or pee. Umbrellaphobia, a kind of mental illness where a person snatches umbrellas from people during cyclones and sells them as cyclone editions. PC-ramophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person cleans PC-ram using soap and water. Luckyophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person waits for pure luck and creates huge hype over simple matters. Lycophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person licks whatever they see and touch. Sanitaryophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person collects all types of sanitary napkins and starts exhibiting. Taputipuphobia, a kind of mental illness where a person beats drums very loudly and gets scolded by children. Carophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person buys modern cars but does not drive. Petrolophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person steals petrol from vehicles and resells it cheap. Childophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person behaves like a child during parties and exhibitions but speaks like an adult. Kissophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person kisses others for no reason and refuses to say sorry. Homeworkophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person does homework all night long but forgets to go to school the next day. Leavophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person takes leave from office but returns to work suddenly in the evening hours. Noodlephobia, a kind of mental illness where a person eats noodles 3 times daily but farts like a snake. Injectophobia, a kind of mental illness where a person injects himself often and forgets about it due to extreme happiness or sadness.